Have you ever noticed the way your legs speak? Not loudly, not with pain, but with the subtle language of delay. That pause before rising, that quiet negotiation with stairs, the extra breath taken before stepping forward. They don't shout, they ask, politely but persistently. After 60, the legs do not simply carry weight, they carry memory. Of decades standing for others, of long days that left no time to stretch, of walks that became shorter, then fewer, then cautious. But maybe what you've called weakness is really a whisper for attention. Maybe your legs aren't failing. Maybe they're fading into silence because no one has been listening. There is a woman who opens her curtains at exactly 7:52 a.m. each morning, not to check the weather, but to let her knees remember the warmth of a life lived outside. That light isn't therapy, it's a ritual, one she doesn't name, one she doesn't skip. The sunlight lands on her legs like a promise. We are still here. There is a kind of strength that lives not in gyms, but in these small returns. Vitamin D, they say, lives in the sun. But the deeper truth is that it lives in reconnection, in warmth, in a kind of attention that doesn't demand performance. The body knows how to make it, but only if we give it a reason to remember. And when we don't, it asks us kindly, through aching thighs, through late-night leg cramps, through the quiet friction of joints that don't want to bend. The sun doesn't scream, neither do your bones, but both want to be seen. Just for a few minutes each day. Just enough to say, I haven't forgotten you. There is a man who keeps a small amber bottle on his kitchen counter. Inside is cod liver oil. Thick, strange, almost medicinal. But for him, it's not about the oil, it's about the gesture. The way he opens the cap like unlocking a drawer of memory. He doesn't chase youth, he fortifies presence. That's what D is for. Dignity, not just density. And the science follows. Yes, it aids calcium. Yes, it stabilizes muscle fibers. Yes, it lessens falls. But what if the body simply wants one thing? Consistency. The sun, the oil, the ritual, the whisper, they're all one thing, really. A reminder that strength returns when we stop ignoring our edges. Some evenings, the woman watches her cat stretch. Slow, exact, without urgency. She mirrors the motion in her chair. Her legs are no longer what they were, but they are no longer being neglected either. That is a kind of resurrection. Now, imagine a day where the legs feel a little less like anchors and more like roots, strong, alive, grounded. That's not magic. That's memory restored through care, through noticing, through vitamins that do more than nourish. They reconnect. The silence in your legs is not absence, it is invitation. There is a moment, often at night, where your body speaks most clearly, not in language, but in sensation. That twinge behind the knee, that small collapse of strength when you rise too fast. That echo in the calf like a forgotten cord being plucked. It is your nervous system, underfed and overworked, asking for repair. B12 is not a supplement, it's a signal booster between you and your own movement. There is a man who used to dance. His wife remembers not his footwork, but the way he leaned forward before the first step. That pause, that readiness. These days, his balance wavers. Not because he's lost it, but because his muscles no longer hear the call. It happens slowly, a misstep here, a stumble there, a growing sense of doubt, and under all of it, a quiet fraying of the invisible lines between command and response. B12 weaves those lines again, gently, silently, until one day, the legs respond just a little faster. The arms steady the body without delay. The fingers no longer tingle. And confidence, not bravado, but quiet certainty, returns. The man begins walking again, just down the street, past the mailbox, past the neighbor's roses. Farther than yesterday, not as far as youth, but far enough to feel like he has arrived. You don't need to sprint to feel powerful. Sometimes power is just the absence of hesitation. There are knees that creak not from age, but from accumulation. Of strain, of small stumbles no one saw. Of years where recovery was a luxury and rest was guilt. Sometimes the legs don't hurt, they echo. And what you feel isn't injury, it's layering, like dust building on a piano that hasn't been touched, though the music is still inside it. Vitamin C has been marketed as immunity, but for the aging body, it's restoration. Not heroic, not instant, but patient. It doesn't rush in with noise. It rebuilds quietly, molecule by molecule, like someone restitching a beloved coat you thought was ruined. There's an old woman, I forget her name, who kept a small bowl of citrus by her window, not for show, not even for the fruit, but for the scent. She said it reminded her body what aliveness smelled like, that sharp, clean brightness that cuts through foggy mornings, the sting that wakes you but doesn't scare you. She said, "My knees remember better when I peel an orange slowly." And when she stood, they followed her with more grace. Not because they were younger, but because they were listened to. Collagen is not youth, it is glue. It holds you in place, not tightly but tenderly. Without it, the spaces between things widen, between bone and muscle, between now and recovery, between step and confidence. Vitamin C brings those spaces closer. It shortens the echo, so that when you step without asking if it will hurt. You step and trust follows. There is a man who used to paint houses. Now he paints birdhouses, smaller, lighter, slower. But after sanding, his hands ache, his knees swell. He used to power through. Now he stirs a powder, cherry, they say, into warm water each morning. It tastes like ritual, and over time, it stitched something back. Not just less swelling, but more forgiveness. Because that's what repair is. Not a reversal, but a release from the need to always bounce back. We grow older, not brittle. But if we don't replenish, we calcify, not just in joints, but in belief. Vitamin C is the reminder that softness is allowed, that healing can be slow and still count. That flexibility is not just in limbs, but in how we treat our limits. Some mornings, the woman by the citrus bowl forgets to eat, but she still touches the skin of a grapefruit. Just once. It's enough. The knees remember. There are times when strength is present but misplaced, when the bones still hold, but something in your posture feels like it's drifting. You stand upright, but feel tilted. You eat well, but feel hollow. You stretch, and the tension goes deeper instead of leaving. This isn't about weakness, it's about disorientation. Calcium is not magic, it's material. But without guidance, even something good can cause trouble. Stiffness, crackling joints. That strange tightness in your hips, even though you haven't moved much. Vitamin K2 doesn't bring strength, it directs it. It is a quiet messenger inside the body saying, "Not here, go home." There is a man who walks his hallway every morning, barefoot. 10 steps one way, 10 steps back. He does it not because it's a workout, but because the wooden floor reminds him of his father's carpentry shop, of solid ground. He once had a calcium scan that showed strong numbers, yet his knees still locked without warning, until someone told him, strong doesn't mean correct. He started adding a sliver of ghee to his toast, didn't call it a remedy, didn't even tell his kids. But after weeks he said, "I don't brace as much anymore." He didn't mean emotionally, though maybe that too. That's K2. It doesn't push, it places. There's something beautiful about a vitamin that isn't forceful, that simply moves calcium like a river guide moves boats. Bone receives, artery releases. The body breathes again where once it stiffened. Posture is not a matter of pride. It's a memory of structure. And when it goes, so does something deeper, a sense of being held up by yourself. K2 brings that back, not by building, by redirecting. By reminding your body that flow matters as much as form. You may not notice it instantly, but one day you'll step out of bed and realize you didn't clench anything. Your lower back doesn't whisper pain before you've even bent. You walk into the kitchen and your spine feels like it remembered how to stand with you, not against you. That's not reversal, that's realignment, which, in aging, is the truest form of healing. There's an old woman who always touches her collarbone before sleep. Not for any reason she can name. She says it helps her feel upright. She says it feels like closure, not ending, but stillness. That's what happens when calcium goes where it belongs. The body doesn't celebrate, it just calms. And that calm becomes energy saved, for steps that matter, for climbs you want to make, for dignity you don't have to explain. The man still walks his hallway, but now he carries a cup of tea with him, and he doesn't grip the wall anymore. Sometimes the body doesn't ask for strength, it begs for release. It's in the calves that tighten without warning, in the toes that curl against the cold floor, even in summer, in the sudden flick of a cramp that wakes you, not violently, but like a knock on a closed door at 3 a.m. It doesn't scream. It says, something is holding on too long. Magnesium is the mineral of letting go, not in weakness, in trust. There is a man who used to fish alone, early in the mornings. Now, he rarely leaves the porch, but once in a while, when the cramps in his legs don't arrive to stop him, he walks to the edge of his yard and listens to the wind move through pine needles. He says, "That's the only time my body stops humming." He doesn't mean song, he means tension. That low electrical buzz that lives in tired legs. Legs that hold stress long after the moment is gone. There is a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from doing, but from bracing, holding the same tightness in the muscles day after day because the body expects something to go wrong. Magnesium is the quiet friend who comes and says, "It's safe now, you can exhale." There's a woman who carries a small tin of pumpkin seeds in her coat pocket. Not because she's hungry, because they remind her to return, to chew slowly, to pause on the park bench instead of power through the loop. She says the chewing slows her thoughts. And when the magnesium reaches her system, the sleep that follows that night feels like silk, not shut down. Because true rest is not just absence of movement, it's permission to soften. Poor circulation often masks as fatigue, but the real culprit is stagnation. Like a stream that stopped flowing, not because it was blocked, but because it forgot how to move. Magnesium teaches motion again. It tells vessels to relax. It tells muscles, you don't have to clench to be ready. It tells the nervous system, you can stop checking the exits. And in doing so, it gives energy back, not adrenaline, not drive, but availability. There's a grandfather who began putting his legs up against the wall each evening, just 10 minutes. He doesn't call it yoga. He says, "It just feels like everything inside me slides back into place." He doesn't know about muscle relaxation thresholds or oxygenation or synaptic recovery. He only knows that afterwards his knees don't burn, and the stairs to his bedroom feel less like a challenge and more like a path. That's the gift. Not movement regained, but resistance relieved. When magnesium flows, the body doesn't surge forward. It settles into itself. And from that place, you can begin again, without fear of cramping, bracing, or breaking. There is healing in the stillness after the muscle lets go. And sometimes, that is all the strength we need. Some legs aren't tired, they're cold, not from temperature, from absence. From not being reached, not being moved through, not being remembered by the very blood that built them. There is a particular kind of loneliness that lives in the lower legs. It's the silence after a walk cut short, the swelling that appears for no clear reason, the sense that something isn't flowing, not thoughts, not emotions, but circulation. Vitamin E is the soft return of that flow, not as a flood, but as a gentle wave that reaches where numbness had begun to settle. There is a woman who used to dance barefoot in her kitchen. Her granddaughter would join her, twirling with a wooden spoon. Now, her steps are measured, her slippers padded, and her feet, she says, feel like someone else's sometimes. Unfamiliar, detached. She started taking a small spoon of wheat germ oil, not because a doctor told her, because her neighbor said, "It made my feet feel warmer." After weeks, she noticed the numbness was no longer her morning default. She could feel the floor again, its grain, its chill, even its creak under her heel. That's circulation returning, not with fanfare, with familiarity. Vitamin E doesn't energize, it reconnects. It reminds your blood how to reach every corner. It coaxes the vessels open like old windows being lifted after a long winter. When the legs receive flow again, they respond not with sprinting, but with readiness. The walk is easier. The rise from the chair doesn't ask for two hands. The swelling disappears quietly, without announcement. There's a grandfather who used to sit on his porch, watching people pass. He always covered his legs with a blanket, even in spring. Now, he doesn't. He says, "They feel like they belong to me again." That's what vitamin E offers. Not just warmth of limb, but ownership. Coldness is often mistaken for age, but often it is distance, between blood and muscle, between memory and movement, between you and the part of you that carries you forward. When circulation returns, so does intimacy. Not just with body, with life. The woman still dances in the kitchen, not daily, not wildly. But when her song plays, she sways, barefoot, connected, whole. Because legs that are seen, that are reached, that are kept warm from the inside, don't ask to run. They ask to move without apology. You don't need to remember every vitamin. You don't even need to name what changed. If something in your legs softened while listening, if a part of your body exhaled, if your breath slowed without trying, then something returned. Not youth, not strength, but presence. The legs carry more than your body. They carry your pause, your dignity, your return to places you didn't even know you had left. They do not ask for praise. They do not need milestones. They only need to be remembered as living things still listening for your voice. And now, perhaps they've heard it again. You haven't missed your chance. You haven't gone too far. You haven't waited too long. You're just at the part where the body stops surviving and starts trusting. You're not behind. You're just beginning again. If you'd like to walk further with us, not faster, not louder, just further, you're welcome to stay. We read every thought, even the quiet ones. Until next time, take a slower breath and take care of your story.